Welcome to the Athlete's Mindset. Today's guest is Bob Hlavac, the head coach at Millard North High School and the 2026 Nebraska Class A state champion. Bob has built a championship program rooted in accountability, discipline, and high standards. I had the opportunity to play for him in high school, and many of the lessons he taught me about hard work, resilience, letting things go have stayed with me long after baseball. In this episode, we talk about building a winning culture, player accountability, leadership, standards in the weight room, and what it takes to achieve success both on and off the field. I'm excited for this conversation. Let's get into it. Bob, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Tristan. How you doing, man?
Doing really well. I'm stoked to have you on here. We go way back. I want to first off congratulate you on just winning the Nebraska Class A state championship. I would say you deserve this, but I know you hate that word, so you 100% earned this. And we'll get into that and just your standards as a coach. But I want to go back to where it first started and just how you got into coaching and kind of where you found that this is something that you're passionate about.
Well, if I have to go all the way back, I can remember coaching I would guess I call it a little league team in my hometown of Louisville. And myself and I think actually Marshall helped me with it.
Mhm.
And then one of our buddies, Dan Tejan, who's in the administration and track coach at Prep. And we coached some probably 11, 12-year-olds in Louisville, like in what we called like peewees or ponies.
Mhm.
And I was probably in college when this happened. So that was probably my first quote unquote coaching gig. And then probably what got me into it was when Kale was born and we just started, playing like every dad does with their kid, playing baseball, and got into the youth coaching probably when he was 5 years old.
Mhm.
And then coached him all the way through, had the opportunity to coach him in high school at Bellevue West. And um, it's kind of where I'm at. That's where I started. It's been a long journey for sure.
Yeah, I feel like you've been coaching for years, like you said, coaching CJ all the way through his time growing up and then into high school. And then great for me. And I think everyone at Millard West that played baseball, when you showed up and became an assistant and really focused on things on the hitting side, I think for a lot of us, we had guys that kind of gave us a little bit of tips, hitting wise. And a lot of them were guys that probably didn't really play baseball, or it was just guys' dads that were like, hey, this is how you hit. And I think you started to really instill into guys like, all right, you have to have a plan, you have to have an approach. And I really appreciate that. But I know you remember this, but after every single at bat, it felt like in high school, I would go up to you and say, what did I do wrong? I could fly out to the warning track and it wasn't a hit. And I would say, what did I do wrong there? Like, what do I need to fix? And it was just so nitpicky. And I was just trying to micromanage everything. And you really just helped me just say, you got to care, but you don't. Can you kind of just explain kind of what that was like hearing me every single at bat? And you probably have players now that do the same thing. And just how do you tone them down and just say, it's baseball, you're going to fail. Just how do you handle that?
I as we always talk about in coaching and players too, like when you stop learning,
Mhm.
you need to get out of the game, right?
Mhm.
So from you, I learned a lot
Mhm.
and how I handle players that have kind of that same mindset where, man, I didn't hit a double or a triple
Mhm.
or hit a ball over the fence, and they come back and ask those questions. And we address that before the season now. Like that's not a conversation we ever have.
Yeah.
That is initiated from them. Now, if we see something in a swing, don't really like to do this, during game,
Mhm.
but if there's something that's drastic, we'll make some changes. But otherwise, they know not to ask that question anymore because of what you taught me. So I give my credit to you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome for being just a nuisance every time I got out. And another thing is I just touched on, but you said, you got to care, but you don't. I think Jake Costitis kind of said this. What does that kind of just mean to you? And like, how do you instill that into players? Because even as a coach, it's like, an inning doesn't go your way. It's 3 up, 3 down, and you're all hot and bothered about it. But then you care, but then you kind of can't. And you got to say, all right, things are going to move on. How do you just kind of think about, you care, but you can't?
Yeah, and I think for players, the way we talk about that phrase a lot. And Jake actually, when Jake was at Iowa Western, I remember checking in on him a couple times, and he's like, "Man, you got to care, but you can't care." And
Mhm.
I thought, wow, That's a pretty good line to use in
Mhm.
coaching. So the way that I use that line now is, I mean, you have to care in the moment, but when that moment's done, we have to flush whatever happened.
Mhm.
And typically it's when somebody carries that, it's something that didn't happen right for them. So you've got to have a short-term memory and thin skin and understand the next play is going to happen really, really quick. So you got to care
100%.
while you're in the box, but then you just got to flush it and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And during your time at Millard West, we win the first state championship in program history. You go on to stay on the coaching staff and win more state championships. And then you get the head coaching job at Millard North. How did that head coaching gig, come to be? And when did it hit you of, all right, I want to be the head guy somewhere and kind of have a program to my own?
Probably the last 2 years at Millard West, I kind of started thinking, man, I think I want to maybe try this on my own. I will tell you that it's not easy. And I thought
Mhm.
as an assistant, I didn't understand everything that goes into being a head coach. There's a lot more. And I talk to Fry once in a while and I tell him like, man, we used to give you a little bit of grief about not getting this or not getting that right, or not necessarily right, but maybe not getting something on time or whatever.
Mhm.
Man, there's so much to do behind the scenes that, people just don't realize. And it's way easier to be an assistant coach and way easier to critique as an assistant coach as to what the head guy's doing. Um, I will probably never ever critique another head coach again. But when I was there last couple years, I kind of thought I wanted my own program. And then, then it comes down to like, where would you want to go?
Mhm.
And when this opening came about, to me, it was a no-brainer. Um, Great tradition, rich school, probably hadn't been to where they wanted to be in the most recent years. And I thought it was a great opportunity and a great challenge to get this program back on its feet and where Millard North deserved to be. So I applied. I had plenty of people that made phone calls for me, and I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to lead this program.
Yeah, and you've done a great job so far. But when you first showed up to Millard North, you'll see this at every level. You'll see this at the college level as well. Is a program that maybe is struggling a little bit or doesn't have just a standard of winning. And you come from Millard West, where it seemed like if we weren't winning a state championship, it was a failure of a season. And you're showing up at Millard North, where winning was something that was a struggle. What were some things when you first showed up that you said, and just this goes for culture as well, is what needed to be changed and what needed to be fixed?
Well, a lot of this credit goes back to Coach Fry, and
Mhm.
he had very high expectations of every year. There was you either win the state or it
Mhm.
wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And that instilled in me to the first year at Millard North, like, and we told the kids in the first year we're going to the state tournament.
Mhm.
We told them, and um, the accountability probably and the standards were different from what they were used to probably going through, and that was probably the biggest challenge. Um, I give the kids that were here enormous amount of credit. They bought into us, they believed in us, and it made everything easier. Um, and then it actually came to fruition that year one we did make the state tournament. So we were definitely not the most talented team in that tournament. The kids would agree with it. We talked about it, but they believed, bought in, and they were very gritty and deserved to be there. So I think going back and instilling the building the culture, we had to start with our own culture and our own standards and holding these guys accountable, whether it was in the weight room or the classroom, outside of the four walls of school, and then really a lot on the baseball field, to be honest.
Yeah, because I feel like when we showed up to practice at Millard West, or I mean, and even in college, when I'd reach back out to you, is like there's a job to get done. Is you're either getting better, or you're getting worse, and I feel like for a lot of programs, is it can be a time where you just say, yeah, I play baseball, I go to practice, we do this, we have these drills, but I think the best programs are ones that show up and say we got a mission and we got to start like getting things done, and we want to show up at the next day and say, all right, I'm going to find a way to get better. So what are kind of just some of those non-negotiable standards that you have in your program?
Well, we use three non-negotiables, and it's not necessarily related to baseball by
Mhm,
any means, but it translates in other areas. So our three non-negotiables that we've got within our program is one, it's all circled around wins,
mhm,
right? And it's all little wins. So the little wins are the three negotiables. Well, there's a lot of little wins, but the three non-negotiables are: one, you make your bed.
mhm,
Before you leave your bedroom, you've got one win before you ever get into any part of the other of the day. Two, you eat breakfast. And then three, you have to do something nice for somebody else throughout the course of the day. And then in the mornings when we do our weight program, which is 4 days a week in the fall, we talk about it. It's the first thing we talk about. I ask who's got some wins.
mhm,
And sometimes it's 3 minutes because we're crying it out of them. And then some days it's 10 minutes because, guys actually went out and they went out and hunted for those wins.
mhm,
And that's the part we want, because you want to hunt on the baseball field. You want to hunt success in life.
mhm.
So we demand that out of them throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, I love that, and I journal every single day and just write down 3 wins as well, and it'll be something as small as, had a good conversation with someone to had a great lift, or it could be something crazy big, and I think it's just one thing to just look back on and go, "Yeah, like, this was a day that I did dominate," and just because there's so many things where you can just feel sorry for yourself or say, "I'm having a bad day," and you'll see guys at practice that will show up, and they're kinda going through the motions and all down, and they're thinking the world is against them. And you're like, "All right, you've had a few good things happen to you today. And if you've gone out of your way to help someone else, then that's a win in itself." And so I think that's a great way just to go about it, is just like there are little wins in life. And I feel like you've done that forever. And if you want to talk about just kind of how you go about it, or what some of your consistent wins or ways that you see as wins are.
Well, um, I think if you preach your non-negotiables, you have to be accountable yourself to doing them.
Mhm,
So I do the same thing. Make the bed every day. I try to eat something for breakfast before I get out the door. And then I go out of my way at some point, and then when it's around these guys all the time, it's not hard to do something nice for somebody.
mhm.
But I try to take it out into to the community as well. Um, the other thing is I wake up every morning and I say I just don't want to be average today.
Mhm.
Average is not acceptable. You got to be excellent in whatever you do.
Yeah, I love that because at Portland, I think I've told you this, is that anytime there was someone that'd be like, "Hey, let's go get an extra lift in," or "Let's go hit a little bit extra." If you said no, and we're like, "No, I'm tired. I don't really want to," it was always the world needs average people. And so someone would tell you that, and they would just hit you, and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to be one of those average people in the world. I need to step my game up." And so I think that was one thing that just like stuck with me now, is anytime I don't want to do an extra set in the weight room, or I don't even want to go to the weight room, it's like, all right, I can just be average. And, when I don't feel like it, I don't have to. And that kind of goes along with like discipline and motivation. But that kind of transitions me to the weight room. You've always cared about it in your own life, but then also set a high standard of, if you want to be the best on the baseball field, you got to work hard in the weight room, not only for success on the field, but also just in all aspects of life. Why is the weight room such an important part of your life, and then also just the standard for your players?
Well, for me, it's just become a lifestyle in the weight room. I enjoy going there. That's kind of my release.
Mhm,
Go in there and get a little treadmill time and get a lift in, and try to just, like everybody, you put the headphones in, the earbuds in, and just kind of like let nothing else in except, the 45 minutes or an hour you're there. Just lock in on yourself, and try to make yourself better in that aspect. Um, and then I got to try to stay young to keep up with these guys, for crying out loud. I'm not getting any younger. So
mhm.
I got to try to do something to stay young. But the weight room for us, like we've got a sign in our dugout that says success comes through the weight room. And we truly believe in that. Jake Kostadis, we mentioned earlier, now with the Oakland A's organization, comes back, and we're very fortunate to have him and his strength conditioning and the mobility and his mindset stuff that he works on us with helps create, sustain, and build our culture. And the culture, I think, leads to the standards. So we do a lot in the weight room in the fall and less probably on the baseball field because of restrictions that the state puts on us from being able to run full practices. And we do some stuff hitting wise once we get later into the fall, but a lot of our guys go out and play fall baseball with other organizations, and we encourage that. But back to the weight room, that's kind of where it starts with us. And from the freshmen to the seniors, sometimes we have days where we mix the seniors in with the freshmen just to have that the camaraderie where they're building relationships, and these guys are pushing them. So there's really not a gap. We don't like to segment, hey, the freshmen are over here. Obviously on heavy days we got our guys going with the heavy, with the bigger weights, but um we try to make that a big family. And I think family gets overused a lot of times, but it's a huge part of the process that we instill at Northern.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and I think it's just another thing that's just to do hard things. I mean, when you're in the weight room and you hit a PR or you push yourself just a little bit, it's just something that you can tack onto a resume and go, yeah, I can do hard things. I can push myself. So when in the game things get hard or in life things get hard, you say, I didn't ask for this, but I've voluntarily done hard things that have proven that I can get through them. And so that's one thing that I just love. And I'm curious, just what does the weight room show about a kid to you? You know, if there's a guy that's always pushing himself or a guy that, maybe doesn't seem to push himself, what does that say about that kid and how you can rely on him on the baseball field, but also just in life as well?
Yeah, and I think character is you can't really lie in the weight room. The weights are weights,
Yeah.
right? So you have to move them, and you find out a lot about an individual, in my opinion, on what their why is. Are they really in there just to get through the lift and check it off the box? Or are they in there to you know build themselves up and prepare themselves for the upcoming season or their career for that matter? And it's easy to see the kids that are in there for those reasons, and it's easy to see the kids that are in there just because, hey, we're supposed to be in here and lift weights. Well, it translates to the field. It translates to classroom. I mean, the harder you work in there, in my opinion, the slower the game can get when you get out here, like you just commented on. When it gets hard, we've done hard things in the weight room,
Mhm.
and we continue to do hard things in the weight room for those reasons. And you go back to the state tournament, and it got hard. It got hard out of the gate. They scored three, they scored four. Oh boy, last year's hit us again, right?
Yeah.
And we talked to them in between a couple innings, like, hey, we've done this before. We've been in hard situations. Slow the game down, trust your training, and just continue to play free and loose. And I think all of that comes back to the preparation that we did in the weight room.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a segue into my next question of, how much the weight room is a standard and what you can tell about a player, about a team based on how they treat it in there. What are some other things that you think separates, good teams, teams that maybe just make the state tournament to the teams that win it all or win consistently or able to come from behind late in a game and find a way to win? What do you think separates good teams from championship teams?
I think, like, for us, it's building trust in each other. You got these guys they gotta they gotta love each other.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that you brought when you were here is you always talk about dabbing guys up, right?
Mhm.
Like pumping them up, fist bumping each other. And we have not gotten away from that. We
Yeah.
still keep that. And I can tell you that early in this year, we kind of got away from that.
Yeah.
And I think it was Coach Borner that brought it up. He's like, remember Tristan talked about dabbing? Yep. And we brought it back in. And I can tell you that it was almost a turning point in the way that these guys like respected. They wanted to go to battle with each other, and they just got closer. So there's something to be said about that, and that's something you put into our program.
I appreciate that because I absolutely loved that, and I learned that from the University of Portland, where it was pretty much you get done with a drill, we get done with infield drills, and you go to every guy in the infield, just touch each other, high fives, all of it. And it's just one of those things that goes back to the little wins, is stacking up little victories. And so every time you finish something up as a team, you go, all right, that's another win that we just added to our backpack, and we got to celebrate that. So it's just celebrating the little things, because then if you're only celebrating the big things, everything else is going to be kind of miserable. And I want to hear kind of your thoughts on just how, I mean, one, how that, changed your entire season, but then also just how that kind of stuck with you as well.
Well, I don't think you get the big things and the big wins without the little ones. I mean,
Yeah.
and that goes into just like, when we do base running, hitting the front corner of the bag and doing all those little things the right way. You just can't get to the end goal without doing the little things right. It just doesn't work. And having everybody love each other and holding each other accountable for those little things. You can't be excellent enough on those things.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. And I want to talk about the mental side, because you helped me tremendously, not only as a player, but when I was coaching with you, just with the mental side and handling adversity, and how, it's a game of failure. How are you going to get through it? And if you're go 0 for 4 one day and you're feeling sorry for yourself, you can't expect positive results the next day. And I think that's one thing I took me forever to learn, is if I'm telling myself I suck, that's not going to make me get hits. But I'm curious, just what are some things that you see young players struggle with now, just on the mental side of the game?
I think a lot of young players have a lot of success early, in their youth ball, and they expect to have that extended success when you get to high school, and the game gets harder, and it's different. There's so many games within the game, the nuances, and understanding that, and being able to flush, failure. And I know, as I talk to a lot of college coaches, they recruit watching failure, and
Mhm.
that is going through the recruiting process, that they love to see a kid fail and how he handles it. And that's something that we talk to our guys about a lot. Like, that play's done, and it goes back to Jake's. You got to care, but you can't care.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that revolves around that line, and that we're always looking for that next play, because as well as I do, you have a bat at bat. Guess who the baseball when you go to the field comes to?
Mhm.
It finds you.
Yeah.
So you've got to be strong enough mentally, to be able to overcome adversity throughout a practice, a game, a weight session, life. So we spend a lot of time talking about that, and leadership and accountability, and being able to overcome those obstacles that happen in a game of baseball.
Today's episode is brought to you by Relight Hydration, my go to for staying fueled and refreshed. As a former athlete, I know how important it is to stay hydrated. And Relight makes it simple with clean ingredients and essential electrolytes. My two favorite flavors, lemon lime for that crisp, classic kick, and mixed berry when I want something a little sweeter. Whether it's before a workout, during a long day, or after training, Relight keeps me going. You can try it yourself and get 15% off with my code Athletes Mindset at checkout. That's Athletes Mindset for 15% off at Relight. Stay sharp, stay hydrated.
Yeah, and I think giving yourself grace is kind of one of those huge things. One thing I heard from Darren Erstad when I talked to him is, don't forget how hard the game is. Because, yeah, I mean, he was a guy that was the first overall pick, played plenty of years in Major League Baseball. And then when he got into coaching, anytime he would see a guy strike out on a fastball down the middle, he'd be like, I would have hit that 400 feet. Like, what are we doing? But then you look back at your own career and go, and I do this too, of, all right, things are a lot harder. I have struck out on a fastball right down the middle. Give these guys some grace. Give yourself some grace, because it is a hard game. And I feel like one thing you do great as a coach is just instill confidence into players. And I think that's what the best coaches do. How do you go about just making sure that when your players step out on the field, not only do they have confidence in themselves, but they look over at you and you're just as confident?
Well, one thing, and the whole staff does a great job of this too, is just like we try to stay like a thermostat. There's a time to get excited, obviously, but when you fall below the thermostat and you start, pushing players and pressing players, and you get pressed yourself because you get sped up, somebody hangs a 5 spot, and you're like, you start, yelling at players and things like that. That's just not. I mean, you're not giving them any confidence, right? So we try to stay at that thermostat level as a staff where, hey, they threw a punch, we've got to come back and throw another punch. We don't have to get it all back in one inning necessarily, depending on where you're at in the game. But just keeping them confident, and we try to stay extremely positive with them. And yeah, would be a player that listens to this and goes, "Well, you yelled at me one day." Well, you probably earned that.
Yeah.
So we don't yell to yell. There's a reason that maybe we have to get after them a little bit, and I think that's hard coaching too. So we expect our players to be able to be coached hard, and again, we kind of go back to the weight room on that stuff where we make it hard in the weight room. So when we get out here, it's not as hard. So you know, David Benny asked me something about, he said, and I'll paraphrase his question about, your players look like they knew they were going to win or something like that. And I said, well, they've been told that for a long time.
Yeah.
And we've told them this year, you're the best team in the state. And not every night we were by any means. I mean, we had several losses. We had some games where that night we weren't the best team,
Yeah.
but we felt like, and we always feel like, you're never ever playing your best baseball. And we just happened to kind of get to that level later in the course this year and started playing good baseball. So, always not necessarily stroking them, but giving them the confidence that, hey, you guys, you have a chance to be the best team in the state. And I think that goes a long ways with them understanding that they don't have to like play fear in fear. We don't want them to play in fear.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly, on them about that, then they're never going to play free, and they have to play free in this game.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly well said, and also just going into every battle just expecting to win. I mean, that's what the best teams do, and I think for so long, teams that have struggled, it's because they get to a point in a game where you say, "Oh, here we go again. This is the time where we just made an error and now we lose." And then for the really good teams, like your Millard North team this year, it's all right. When are we going to win? Like we know what's going to happen. There's going to be an inning that we're going to punch back. You guys did exactly that in the state championship, and I think you're a great leader of young men, but also just instill into younger guys as well how to be leaders. What do you think makes a good leader on a baseball field?
There's a lot of things that go into leadership, holding each other accountable. I think the most important thing for a player to be a leader is he's got to be accountable himself. And this year, just a quick story. So we had our guys come up to us early in the lifting season, so probably October-ish, late September. And the previous year, we had a ton of leaders, and they were really good about leading, holding everybody accountable, encouraging. It was awesome. Well, this group of seniors and some juniors were led. They didn't lead last year.
Mhm.
And we had a couple of them come out to weights one time because we kind of got on them about need some leadership in here. And they're like, Coach, we really don't know how to lead. So then we have to go like regroup and go, how do we teach these guys to be leaders? So here's what we did. We went through Michael Jordan's series, right? So every week at 10, 11 episodes, whatever that is, every week they had to go watch week 1, episode 1, obviously 2, come back with a paragraph written about leadership and accountability. And there's probably a lot of people that don't agree that Jordan was the greatest teammate, but he was an unbelievable leader. He he held himself accountable. There wasn't anything that he didn't ask, or he wouldn't ask somebody else to do, that he wasn't willing to do. So we started that series and finished it. And by the end of it, some people understood what their role was to be on the team.
Mhm.
And I think that was monumental in our success this year.
Yeah, I know there's plenty of people that will talk about you can, lead by example, you can be a vocal leader. I think the best ones just do it both. And that's
Yep.
just what you have to do. And I think you said it perfectly is, yeah, I wouldn't ask someone else to do something that I wouldn't do myself. But then also, I'm going to hold you accountable because I expect you to do the same back to me. Like if I'm messing around or slacking off or not doing something the way it should be, then you tell me that as well. And then you almost just get a team full of guys that are going to hold each other accountable. Because when you just have one, it just turns into a dictatorship. And I think you do a good job of just, even with the coaching staff, is given everyone on the coaching staff did this when I was there, did it this year, of just like you ask for feedback. You're not just saying, I make the lineup. This is exactly how things are doing. This is the practice. This is everything. You let other people get a little bit in there. I think that just makes everyone else feel confident that they can speak up. Um, to kind of wrap things up, what do you think some people get wrong about success? I think so many times now in social media, you can see just like, oh, this guy had a great showcase, or this guy's unbelievable, or whatever, and you can start comparing. But you don't see all of the work that gets done behind the scenes. What do you think people get wrong about success?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, Probably people don't understand what all goes into success, and I think you kind of said it there with like I keep going back to the weight room, and I just we hold so much true in there that that's where it all starts for us. And I don't think that people realize our weight program stands for within our program, and it's huge. Um, we preach success, and I guess I look at it and I don't see anything wrong with success. I think that's what you thrive for in life, and you've got to compete in life. So, we just talk about competing to win all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think you instilled that into all of us growing up. All of your team now is just that there's a standard and you expect to win every single time you step on the baseball field. I end every conversation with the same question. I'll use coaching for this aspect, but if you go back and give your younger self just one piece of advice when it comes to coaching, especially on the mental side of coaching, let's say yourself when you were coaching Kale growing up and to where you are now, what is some advice you would give yourself?
For me, it's one word. It's patience. I am. I have become more of a patient coach um, than I was probably even 5 years ago, and I try to be more patient and more patient. And I back that with there's urgency involved too, but you still have to be patient with urgency if that makes sense. But I think that was my probably one of my biggest flaws. That, and I've become way more detailed as a coach now, and there's just so much of an advantage to being more detailed and prompt and patient. And I think those are all three qualities that it takes to be a great leader for these young men.
I love it. Bob, I appreciate you always. You've helped me not only, on the baseball field, but also just in life in general. And so I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to hop on here and you earned that state championship. And I just want to say congratulations and thanks for coming on.
Man, thanks. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you again to Bob for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoy this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.